Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tales from the Trenches. I am Stephen Collins, the CEO of Matter. We are a healthcare technology incubator and innovation hub with a mission to accelerate the pace of change of healthcare. We do three things in service of our mission. First, we incubate startups. We launched in 2015, and since then, we've worked with more than 800 companies that range from very early to growth stage startups, and we have a suite of services to help them at every stage of development. Second, we work with large organizations, health systems, life sciences companies, payers, and others to strengthen their innovation capacity. We help them find value in emerging technology solutions, empower internal innovators to unlock the value of their ideas, and create a more human-centered healthcare experience through system-level collaborations. And third, we're a nexus for people who are passionate about healthcare innovation. We bring people together to be inspired and learn and connect with each other. And we produce a lot of programs, including events for the broader community, as well as small forums that are exclusively for our members. Tales from the Trenches is our longest standing series, where we interview accomplished, interesting entrepreneurs who share their journeys and how they got started and what they've learned along the way. And today we're joined by Stephanie Tilenius, who's the CEO and founder of Vida Health. She has a fascinating background as an entrepreneur, as well as a builder of businesses within large technology companies. We'll hear more about that. Stephanie will be interviewed by Suzette McKinney, who leads the life sciences practice for Sterling Bay, the real estate developer, and also serves on the Matter board. Among other things, Suzette is leading a huge and very exciting life sciences development in Chicago. If you have questions throughout the program, please put them into the chat, and Suzette will weave them into the conversation as appropriate. Stephanie and Suzette, thank you so much for joining us today and being part of this discussion. We are very much looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you today. Hi, Stephanie. I'm super excited to talk with you today and to engage in this discussion and give our audience the opportunity to learn more about you.
Well, it's great to be here, and thank you for taking the time today, and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So before I hop into the questions, I just want to say one of the things that is so inspiring to me that I've read with regards to your background was about your motivation for starting your company, essentially around the challenges that your father was facing as he was experiencing a number of health challenges. And it's just really inspiring to me to read about, how it was through your father's experiences that you were motivated to start Vida Health back in 2014. So with that, why don't we start? I'll turn it over to you, and I'll just ask you to tell us a little bit about your journey and your story in the healthcare space.
Sure. Well, thank you again. So I started Vida mostly for personal reasons, although professionally, I thought it would be a way to help healthcare and the industry at large. So I have a background in technology. I spent a long time at eBay and PayPal and Google and built products that scaled to millions of consumers, and mostly focused in the kind of commerce and payments area, and always had a passion for healthcare, and really tried to anchor my work around making things better for people. So at eBay, we talked about essentially enabling economic democracy. Like, we had people on the platform that built a living on eBay, were able to send their kids to college, pay their mortgages, and those kinds of things. And I always thought that there was a lot of innovation that needed to come to healthcare. And so then what happened was kind of a confluence of personal and professional dynamics, where my dad had multiple chronic conditions. So he had obesity, diabetes, congestive heart failure, COPD, and depression, and he was on multiple medications. And if you looked at the underlying root drivers of all of these conditions, it was around lifestyle, so stress, sleep, nutrition, managing his medication adherence, his exercise, and nobody was really managing him day to day. Like, he would go to see a doctor and they would get a prescription, but there was no what I call continuous care. where someone was a coach or, a nurse or a therapist or even a doctor, like talking to him daily, giving him guidance, tracking his his behavior around meds, exercise, sleep, stress, nutrition. And at that time, there were all these new devices coming out, and I was a quantified self person. Like, I was tracking all of my behavior. And so I was trying to get my dad to do that. And it was early in the Fitbit days, and, we didn't have the sophistication we have today, but I thought it made sense that he should have devices tracking, and we should be able to have a mobile device that tracks his behavior and sleep and nutrition. And this just didn't exist. And so I just started prototyping a solution. And then I realized, when I started investigating the problem in healthcare, where, we spend over $4 trillion and more than 80% of that is on chronic disease that could be managed in a continuous way much more effectively, then I started to get really intrigued about providing this solution beyond just my dad.
Mhm. Wow, it's fascinating. I'm sure there are so many people in our audience who have friends and family members that are experiencing multiple healthcare conditions and have some of the same challenges. I can recall, immediately family members that I have that would be in need of someone to help coordinate and monitor and track all of our behaviors as it relates to our health. So, Stephanie, you've been described as both an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur. Now, speaking for myself, I was not familiar with the word intrapreneur. So tell us about what that is and a little bit about your entrepreneurial experience.
Well, I was an entrepreneur before I joined eBay and PayPal. I had started a company called Planet RX, took it public in October of '99. It was an online pharmacy benefit management company. And I was interviewing, and I was thinking about starting another company, and I was interviewing at eBay, and Meg Whitman, who was CEO at the time, said to me, well, you should come here and be an intrapreneur, right? You can be an entrepreneur inside a big company. And, I really wasn't thinking of doing that, but I met all these amazing, smart, amazing people at eBay and decided that they were doing things that really had an impact. And so I ended up going there and spending a decade at eBay and PayPal, and really was an intrapreneur. So, I did a lot of things that from the ground up that required sort of entrepreneurial mindset and build mentality. So I ended up building a lot of international at eBay, automotive, we called it eBay Motors at the time. And then PayPal, when we acquired PayPal, there really was no off eBay business or any kind of platform for merchants across the web. And so I built that from the ground up. And so I got into the habit of building new things inside big companies and starting teams, and then ended up building these things that became very large. A lot of what we built became what PayPal is today. So I really enjoyed that experience. I highly recommend, being an entrepreneur inside a big company. You learn a ton and you're able to really have a big impact. And then I've also been an entrepreneur, which is a different, it's a higher beta process. I mean, it's in some ways, I joke with some of my investors that it's much harder to be an entrepreneur than an intrapreneur because you're always on the precipice. You feel like you're always on the precipice of failure at every given moment. Whereas inside a big company, it's a little safer. So, yeah.
I was struck by when you were talking about starting Vita and looking at your father's healthcare challenges and how you just started prototyping. And I thought, who thinks that way? But clearly it was natural for you. It was already in your background.
Yeah.
So tell me, now that it's been almost 10 years since you formed Vita, how have you seen chronic healthcare management shift over that time period?
Well, when we started, connected devices were used by the quantified self movement, which was a very small group of people that were ahead of their time. And the notion of continuous care was really new. Now I think it's becoming accepted that this is the way that healthcare should be administered. And the pandemic had a huge impact in that, people had to connect through audio, video, asynchronously, not in person, obviously, during the pandemic. And so the care for diabetes and obesity and mental health and all the things that we do essentially moved online, mobile, and really became a common way of interacting for consumers. So I think we've made a huge transition to that as the standard methodology for care, and I think people really accept that now as the way that it should be. And then the other learning is that we were really ahead of our time in the sense that we approached this, and partly from my dad's experience, but we approached it like combining the mind and the body. We didn't think you could treat diabetes without treating the mental health pieces of it. We also combined tech and humans. So we had providers in the app that you could get access to, and you could communicate with them asynchronously and synchronously through text and video. And a lot of those things when we first started were new and exciting, and nobody had mobile solutions. And now I think it's become the de facto standard.
Sure. So just a quick follow-up. You talk about people accepting that that's the direction. This is the direction that healthcare needs to go. Would you say that acceptance is across patients, providers, and payers, or is there one of those groups that, still sort of needs to come along a bit?
I think it still is moving. I'd say patients are there first, and providers and payers are getting there. We'll work with primary care docs and work with their patients, and then the patients will go back to the doctor after 3 or 4 months with Vita and have lowered their A1C 2 points and lost weight and improved their hypertension by 10 points. And the doctor's like, wow, this is great. So I think the doctors are still they aren't trained in the day-to-day continuous care or nutrition or anything, the things that we like, the medical nutritional therapy that we do.
Sure.
But when they see the outcomes, they think, oh, this is great. This is exactly how it should be, because they want to be able to practice the top of their license, and they don't have time to do the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's becoming more standardized. And then we have a value-based care methodology where we have guarantees on the return on investment in our product in terms of medical cost savings. And that value-based care is really quickly expanding in healthcare. I would say it still has room to grow in becoming the standard, but you have companies like large payers like Humana, where we serve some of their customers, and they have, the majority of their contracts are value-based contracts. So we're getting there.
Okay. That's fantastic. So, obviously then we know, and we can understand that the chronic care space is continuously growing. But in the context of that space, how do you navigate, just maintaining a successful company? Being as entrepreneurial and as you are, I'm sure that you have many other demands on your time as well. So talk to us a little bit about not just how you maintain a successful company, but how you also maintain balance in your own life.
Well, from a company standpoint, we're always changing and evolving, and we challenge everyone in the company to be 1%. We have a saying, 1% better every day. And if you're 1% better every day, then you're 37 times better in a year. And so that's how we really pride ourselves on like a growth mindset and growing individuals inside the company, moving them around, trying different jobs, making sure that we're giving people the coaching and the growth that they need, and that we're all like growing with the company. So, and culture is a really big investment, and we have to really, it's like a garden. You have to tend it. You have to keep investing in it and evolving it. And so that's from a company perspective. And then, from a personal perspective, I definitely have different habits that help me be more effective. And I can tell when I'm getting to a point where I might be, if I've spent 15 hours on Zoom, I might be a little burned out. And so, so I have balance. And I'm very strict about sticking to my health regime, my exercise, my sleep, my meditation, those kinds of things. So.
Wow. So what does the future of Vida Health look like?
Well, we were talking a little bit about it earlier, which is, the continuous care that we provide individuals that have chronic disease like diabetes or obesity or depression, anxiety. The way that we're operating today, where we are there 24/7, it's a continuous care model, is the standard, I think, that should be in healthcare. It should be reimbursed by all payers. We should be in network everywhere. It's cheaper and more effective. We have great outcomes, and it just doesn't make sense to have to go see the doctor every quarter, and also like day to day, you're not going to be able to make the behavior change and the effect. You're not going to get the effect you need with just a 7-minute doctor visit every so often. So I think that should be the standard of care for chronic disease.
So I'm sure that we have members of our audience that are wondering, just like I'm wondering, when a patient first hears about Vida Health, what's the point of entry for a patient? How do they access the services that you provide?
Well, we're business to business.
Okay.
So we sell to large employers like Boeing or Cisco, Prudential, and we distribute to we market to their employees, and then they can sign up, and generally it's covered for free. We also work with large payers where we're also distributed for free.
Okay.
And then you can sign up and use the app and get access to the service.
Fantastic. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit and, speak more to the entrepreneurs in the audience today. So what would you say from an entrepreneurial perspective? What's the biggest mistake you've made? And what are some of the things that you do to ensure that you don't make those same mistakes again?
There's so many mistakes. Let's see. I think one of the things you have to realize is you have to be nimble. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you just need to quickly fix them and move on. I think it was Bezos who said, intelligent people can hold two opposing opinions and can change their mind, right? So you need to be stubborn on the long-term vision of what you're trying to achieve, but flexible on the details, and be willing to change your mind and be open to different ways of achieving things. So that, I think that would be the first thing. And then the biggest mistakes I've made are generally around people. I've either hired the wrong people that weren't aligned with our culture, or that didn't work, and then I haven't fired them fast enough. That's generally the mistake that most leaders, not just entrepreneurs, but most leaders make.
Sure. Yeah, because we don't always want to admit that the person that we chose may not be the best choice or the best fit for our culture and our environments, right?
Yeah, I think it's that. And also in my case, I just, I have such a growth mindset, and I've had so many people in my career, at eBay and Google, et cetera, that I've coached that have done really, or I've hired coaches for, and I believe in coaching, and then I've seen them progress. And so I just always take the approach of, oh, okay, well, let's try this, or let's try that, and so, but sometimes you just have to make a call.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would even say the people issue can be a bit of a challenge in any environment, but particularly in an entrepreneurial environment. What other challenges would you say exist, or at least that you faced leading in an entrepreneurial environment?
It's making sure that you go fast enough. The pandemic was really eye-opening for me, because we made decisions so quickly. And I thought to myself, wow, we should just always be making decisions this quickly. So being able to move fast, being able to go, constantly go really high in strategy, but also go low in details and operate and put process in place. I think you need to put process in place faster than you think. And sometimes you get concerned that process is too much, or you're slowing things down, but there's an expression like go slow to go fast. So really spend time aligning and having OKRs, objective and key results, and clarity of what you're trying to achieve, and everyone on the same page, and then you can go much faster.
Sure.
So it's driving alignment. And then I would say it's balancing growth versus profitability, especially in this new macroeconomic environment where before, like a year and a half or year ago, it was all about growth, growth, growth at all costs. And venture capital was free flowing. And now it's what's your path to profitability? And so just constantly looking at balancing those two things.
Before I move to the next question that I have, I just want to pause for a quick second to remind the audience members that if you have any questions that you'd like to pose to our speaker today, Stephanie, please be sure to put those into the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we will get to them as we proceed. So Stephanie, I love listening to leaders of all different types of companies and organizations talk about the things that they do to be successful. You know, I've heard everything from, you know, I get up early and go for a run to, you know, I wake up and handle all my emails first and then have quiet time before I go into the office. So can you share with us some of the things that you do, you know, Stephanie's practices to ensure that you're successful on a daily basis?
Sure. Well, my morning routine is really important to me. I call it time, TIME. So when I wake up, the first thing I do is think about what I'm thankful for. That's the T.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think about what my top intent is for the day, like whether it might be work related, it might be my kids or something, but like, what is my primary intent for that day? And then meditation, I usually do, typically not more than 10 minutes of meditation. And then I exercise, I'm a runner, or I bike, or I hike outside, or I do something. I try to get outside more and more, especially with the weather being better, but it's getting that sunlight and vitamin D is important. So I prioritize that. I don't really skip it at all. It's really important. And then if I'm in a really stressful situation or a contentious situation, I tend to listen and take in all the data and be careful to not respond without thinking about it more clearly. And if there's a situation where it's somehow extremely emotional or something, and I want to write an email, I'll write that email, but I won't send it until 24 hours later.
Sure.
So I give it time I have to really think about the situation. Wow.
I love that. I mean, as someone who is constantly striving to nail down a morning routine, I love the way that you've organized yours. So I don't know if you could tell, but I was writing down what each of the words in the acronym stands for.
Okay.
So I do have a couple more questions, but I'm starting to see questions come in from the audience now. So I'm going to pivot to some of those, and it looks like they are, range the gamut of everything that we've been talking about. So I'm just going to start with the first one and jump right in. Nancy would like to know if you could walk us through how Vita works for a client. How does it articulate with their primary care providers? And is there research being done on the outcomes?
Sure. So we will typically have a large employer like Boeing as a customer, or a large payer like Humana, and we have a PPPM, a per member per month rate that we get. So if somebody's engaged in the product, we get paid for that service. And we do measure outcomes. In fact, we have an ROI guarantee based on our outcomes and our medical cost savings. We have many published papers, more than 10 now, where we have large ends of 500 to 2,000, where we have proven the outcomes, and we have strong outcomes in A1C reduction, blood pressure reduction, depression, anxiety, weight, etc. And we have partnered with a couple of payers over the last couple of years to do actuarial analysis on our medical cost savings. And so that's why we're able to do the ROI guarantee. Okay,
great, thank you. So I'm going to try and group questions that are similar. So here's another one. Do you find staffing shortages cause challenges for payers and providers handling data from Vita? So for example, some alert is created that requires an intervention and there's no one there to manage it. How do you deal with that?
We do not experience that.
Okay.
So most of the individuals that are getting notifications from our service are the people that are actually the consumer or the patient. We're not using a staff, like a doctor or their staff, to communicate with so much.
Okay, great. So next question says, this person is a health and wellness coach that is certified by Duke Health, but based in Dubai. Are there any options for this person at Vida, in Vida?
Oh, I'd love to. We'd love to be in Dubai. They should apply. I don't see why not. I mean, the interesting thing about health coaching is that it can be done from anywhere, and especially in the US, you don't have licensures by state, where we have nutritionists and therapists, which we do manage by state. So,
Great. Now, I know you said, your business is B2B, so not direct to consumer. But for someone who, we have a question for someone who's a board certified nurse coach and has started something called Healthcare 101 as a transformational lifestyle coach. Is there a way for coaches, lifestyle coaches, to get involved with Vida?
Well, we hire lifestyle coaches all the time, so I think that's the most clear way. And we're growing and scaling, so I think that would be the way.
Okay. You should know that our person in Dubai is excited and applying for sure. So
Okay.
Just wanted you to know that that has come through.
Okay.
The next question is related to reaction from providers. Do providers like the service? Do they see value in the product? I think, yes, they do. But how do you get feedback from providers?
Well, we work with different provider organizations. So, for example, Stanford Care is at Cisco, and then we have Sutter Health and other places. So we work with PCPs, and they love the fact that we're getting results for patients and simplifying their lives. And we're looking increasingly to partner with large ACOs where we work with their PCPs, and we're the de facto service for diabetes and obesity, as an example. Really, the cardiometabolic area is where PCPs just need to practice at the top of their license, and they don't have a lot of time. And the day-to-day continuous care we can provide in between their visits.
Great. I have to tell you, I'm looking at these questions, and so many questions about Vida, and we will get to those, but there are also questions about you as an entrepreneur, but also your morning routine. So I want to try and get to some of those.
Okay.
Just a quick comment. Well, no, before I do that, because this question was posed fairly early on. Since building Planet RX, how has being an entrepreneur changed? Or do you think that the path is still generally about the same? Certainly there's comment here that tools available in the economy obviously have evolved, but how has that impacted the entrepreneur?
I think it's very different. We took Planet RX public with 40 million of revenue, which you would just never do today. So the companies are staying private for a long time and building, billion-dollar franchises and then going public. So it's a really different time. And to build a company, the cost to get started is so much lower because there's all these SaaS, software as a service models. I mean, you can pretty much find software for everything you need, whether it be HR related or finance related, or using AWS or Google Cloud or Azure to manage and host your data. There's a bunch of analytics for, there's services for different integrations into EMR and HIPAA compliance. So there's just, pretty much everything you want to do, there's some service.
Yeah.
That didn't exist when I started Planet RX, so very different.
Okay. Another question, just similar to the entrepreneurial journey. How difficult was it to get buy-in into your vision and then getting it funded? What worked and what didn't work?
Well, Well, I think every round, so we're a Series D company. We just raised from General Atlantic in 2021, and every financing A, B, C, D is different, and they're all challenging in their own right. And you just have to know for every given stage what matters. So in the early stages, it's more about vision and team and the size of the market. And also the thesis of the investor and what like targeting the investors that are really interested in your space. The later stages is all about numbers and performance. So you really have to, and the same theory applies, like investors that are interested in your space and have a thesis that aligns with your vision.
Yeah, that's great. Do you think that having a company in Silicon Valley or in the San Francisco area poses challenges that might change how you staff and build your operations?
Well, not anymore. I think the pandemic's changed everything. So people are hiring everywhere, and remote work first is becoming the standard. I mean, I do think we were lucky, and we did have amazing group of core talent early on, and we've maintained a lot of that talent. And so, you do have to find your core group, and Silicon Valley does have a lot of great engineer and product leaders. So you have to figure out where you start. But I think in terms of scaling, everyone's going across the US and global.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have a comment that someone else also loved your time acronym. But another question is, do you use a meditation app? And if so, what is it?
I do. I use Calm, and there are several people in Calm that I really like. So Tamara Levitt, Jay Shetty. And then sometimes I use my own. I have a Spotify playlist that I've created for meditation. So sometimes I use that as well.
Okay. Well, sort of along the same lines of just, personal presence of mind and mental health, what keeps you awake at night? And has the pandemic or Chat GPT changed that at all?
Let's see. The pandemic and Chat GPT have not changed what keeps me awake at night. I don't worry about Chat GPT replacing all of us anytime soon, so that doesn't keep me awake at night.
That's good.
I know it bothers some people though. No, I mean, generally, the things that keep me awake are more closer in to my real day-to-day than the future of humanity, which is neither good nor bad. It's just the reality. So it tends to be like something related to people in my company or a customer or something big that we're trying to do, or my kids or something like that. So,
yeah. I can imagine that as a mom, you're always preoccupied with what's going on with your kids. I know as a mom, I am constantly preoccupied with what's going on with mine.
Yeah.
But that's actually a great segue into our next question. It's essentially a two-part question. So the first part is, what's the hardest part of being an entrepreneur for you personally? And how do you manage being both a mom and a business leader?
Well, they both are teaching me the same lesson, which is patience. Patience is a massive virtue, which I typically have not had a lot of. So, so I'd say that they're both similar. They both require patience. They both require a lot of IQ and EQ. Like you're at the end of the day, you're dealing with people, right? And they also, like, I guess I've learned that you can't control the outcome of everything. So as much as you think you can, you work towards a goal and you do your best, but you can't always control the outcome. And so it's living with uncertainty, but still, really pushing hard and executing and hoping for the best. I think that applies to both entrepreneurship and kids.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to insert one of my own questions in here now. So think back for me to your younger years, your earlier life. If you could talk to 20-year-old Stephanie right now, what would you say to her?
I would say you're going to be surprised by a lot of things in life. So, like, I think we all are so harsh on ourselves. Like, we're all very self-critical. So I would probably say, be less self-critical, less harsh. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm often struck by, so my daughter is 21. And I'm often struck by the differences between when I was that age and, just like you said, being very hard on myself, very critical of all the things that I'm doing. And now watching this new generation coming up and preparing to enter the workforce. And they're so much more in tune with what helps them be happy, whole people, with mental health intact. It's really quite remarkable to watch it unfold in my own household.
I think that's a generational thing. Like, I think in our generation, it was like, work hard and just keep working hard and keep working hard. And now I think people are like working hard, but trying to understand how to have some preservation of their mental health and balance. And they're much more sophisticated, I think, in this generation. Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, well, the questions keep coming. We have 10 questions in queue from the audience, and they are all related to the company and how it's functioning. So what's the biggest challenge or opportunity that Vida is facing at this time?
I mean, I think at this point, it's just scale, right? Just scaling as fast as we can to serve as many people as we can. So, and it's really just, certain parts of our offering, like, are in part dependent on the market, right? So, for example, we just introduced, we started prescribing last year. So we prescribe medication and we deprescribe medication. So our hope is that, individuals who do really well over time would go off their diabetes meds. And now we introduced obesity, the new obesity meds, GLPs. But that's a new area where there's a shortage. And so, it's working with the market and growing along with the market as things are changing in healthcare and reimbursements changing. Medicare is looking finally at obesity as a chronic disease, and working within the payment system of Medicare and the commercial system.
Sure. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to put it out here because it was asked. Do you use remote patient monitoring?
We provide remote patient. Yes, we do that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we ship devices to people's homes and we do RPM. Yeah.
Okay. So what happens when a patient experiences a negative outcome? Is Vida responsible if the advice that was offered creates that negative outcome?
It's a really good question. I mean, we do have medical liability coverage. We haven't had a situation where somebody we haven't had a negative outcome. I mean, we haven't had any, people might not, like, a negative outcome would be someone doesn't lower their A1C as much as they should have, right? So
Sure.
We haven't had any serious medical outcomes.
Would the services that Vida provides, does it require you to purchase malpractice insurance?
We do have malpractice insurance.
Okay. All right. Great. So one of the questions is asking if you could talk a bit about the length of your sales cycle, especially with self-insured corporate plans.
It really depends. It can be anywhere. So self-insured, I'm assuming you mean employers.
Right.
So employers can be anywhere from 6 to 18 months. I mean, it's really hard to tell. Like, we just launched with 100,000 employer group, and that was less than 6 months. A consultant brought us in very quickly. And then we've had other relationships that we've nurtured for a while, and all of a sudden they want to buy. So it depends on, the buying cycle of the employer and where they are in their benefit offering.
Sure. So, I would say this is really, sort of disrupting the healthcare industry. How would you say the FDA is adapting or not to disruptive approaches to healthcare?
Well, the FDA has come out and said that they approve drugs, and they are approving automated software that is a medical intervention like a drug.
Okay.
But they're not getting involved in services that involve a human, like what we do. Like we're essentially a medical practice, right?
Sure.
So they're not regulating what we do.
So who would regulate what you do?
Well, we're just regulated like any other medical service. Like we are a medical services group, right?
Got it. Wow. Fascinating. So our audience is so engaged and looking into your services as we speak. So the next question, this person is saying you offer in-language support for Spanish speakers. Do you have any plans for continued support of diverse groups and making sure that the content and the services are culturally engaging?
Well, we spend a lot of time on this. Our content team really investigates like the different cultural elements. So for example, for Spanish, we had large customers in Texas and Florida, and we knew we needed a Spanish offering. So when we approached it, we looked at Mexican Spanish, Caribbean Spanish, we looked at all the cultural elements, and we took a holistic approach. So all of our marketing, all of our product, all of the providers, all Spanish speaking. And we know how to do that now. And we've got our NPS for Spanish, our Spanish service is like 91. So our net promoter score. So very successful. And now we can do that with other languages. Medicare has about 10 to 12 different languages that are sort of similar to Spanish. So we will look at those. But right now we have not done anything beyond Spanish.
Okay. So I'm going to try and sort of decipher through this next question. There's a lot here, but the audience member is referencing a study that was published out of the Jefferson Medical College around physicians who have higher empathy scores using a particular tool, the Jefferson Empathy Scale, for diabetic patients whose A1C and LDL were in normal ranges than physicians whose scores were lower. So the question is, how does this method generate the same type of response? And do you think it's empathy that actually plays a role?
Yeah, empathy is vital, right? So that's why we have human plus tech. And we think that humans can really affect change and inspire and drive behavior change with other people. And so the connection, we measure the therapeutic alliance between the coach or the therapist and the individual patient. And we really make sure that the human connection is working. We believe fundamentally in the human connection. And we do a lot of work to make sure that all of our providers are trained in motivational interviewing and know how to handle these kinds of situations and really put empathy first and foremost.
Sure. Okay. So this question, I believe it's a follow-on to a question that you previously answered, but I moved the questions away as you answered them, so I'm not sure. But the person is asking, what about RPM and remote diagnostics that attach to your platform?
So we don't really do diagnostics per se, but we do have in our initial onboarding and survey, we do ask enough questions to understand certain, like to put you in a care pathway that it corresponds with your conditions, and we get claims data. So we are essentially, between the claims data and our surveys, assessing which your severity and the path that you should go on. But we're not doing classic diagnostics.
Sure. Something that just reflecting back on the earlier part of our conversation today and just talking about patients with multiple chronic health conditions that they're suffering from. And, I've been learning a lot about, patients within the VA health system and how oftentimes a lot of patients within the VA health system have that same sort of history, multiple chronic conditions, no real care coordination or proper management. Has Vida been able to get into any VA hospital or the VA system at large?
Well, it's not, the VA is just one example, and everyone in the country, essentially, when you look at chronic disease, 40% of people who have a chronic disease have 2 or more, right? So it's prevalent across the country. So we just won an 8-year government contract, but and so we're dealing with a lot of the kinds of patients that you articulated. And most of the I'd say some of our commercial customers that are where they have pretty healthy employee groups have less incident of like polychronic, where they have diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, depression, and anxiety. We see that more in Medicare, and in this new government contract, we'll probably see a lot of that. So, so it depends on the healthiness of the population, but generally when you have chronic disease, 40% have 2 or more.
Sure. Well, we have an audience member, Sophie, who asked her question about 15 minutes ago, and I've been holding off because there were so many company-related questions. So she has a comment, which is that she wants to thank you for a brilliant presentation. But she says, as a young professional, very excited about digital healthcare, would you recommend a particular skill set that's most valuable in a company like Vida, both from a commercial side and a strategy side?
Well, we have talent across all different areas. So we have people who've worked inside large payers and know the healthcare industry. We have all different types of college majors. We have engineers who majored in computer science. We have marketers. We have healthcare sales individual. So it's hard to know without knowing more about your background, but there's a lot of opportunity to work in a digital health company.
Well, perhaps I will suggest that Sophie send you a private note on LinkedIn.
Right.
Maybe she can provide a little bit more information about her background.
Yes, indeed.
So let's see. What 3 words would you use to describe Vida's culture? That's a good one, I think.
Collaborative, committed, and comprehensive.
Okay, the 3 C's. That's awesome.
We're very focused on culture, and we have there, you can look at the culture of our company on our website, and we talk a lot about it. But I would say, we really, we're a committed group that's really mission driven to drive patient outcomes. Yeah,
I love what you said earlier about the culture within the company, and that is, it has to be grown. You have to tend to it like you would tend to a garden. So
yes, you really do have to invest in it.
Yeah, you can't expect it to just be great on its own. It takes work.
Yeah.
Which I think also, touches a bit on the empathy part, because culture is also about caring for those people that you're working with, that you're around on a constant basis. We have an audience member who pointed that out. Her comment is, she appreciates your support of human empathy for your services. This is huge and missing in so much of healthcare services today. So, all right. Well, we have a few more minutes. So as long as you're okay with it, I am going to just keep going because the questions keep coming. We've gone through, just for context, almost 30 audience questions at this point. So the next question is, just about competition. What are your differentiation attributes as compared to your competitors?
Well, the first one is that we treat the body and the mind together. So what we saw when we were treating people with diabetes early on is that we had our coaches and nutritionists coming to us and saying, we can't treat the diabetes without treating the depression. So we have cognitive behavioral therapy embedded, and you're getting care for both. And so our sweet spot is really the mind and the body and co-occurring multiple chronic conditions. The second is really tech and human combined. So we have a lot of machine learning and technology and automation, but really at the center, we are, enabling our practitioners, our providers to be what we call superhuman, like really automating what they do so they can really spend time on the human connection and the care. And the last one is just outcome centricity. Like we really take pride in the outcomes we've achieved, and we focus on delivering medical cost savings, and we publish against those medical cost savings and commit performance guarantees and ROI guarantees against those medical cost savings.
Great, thank you. So here's a good one. How do you imagine the patient journey in 5 years, or even in 10 years, if you can think about it that far ahead?
Well, in 5 or 10 years, I believe everyone will be managing their health daily, proactively, and we'll have a lot more preventive care in this country. We have to find a solution to this. Healthcare is 20% of our GDP. We're on a path for it to be 30%.
Okay.
And we've got 40% of the people in the country have cardiometabolic disease, right? So we have got to get a new plan. It's not an option.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. So back to the, just starting out, early days, investment. How early in the company's lifespan did you seek outside investment to start growing?
After the first prototype and having a couple of it, I think we had like 4 or 5 employees at that time. And we were all just trying to build the first version and get some traction with consumers and understand how we could scale the company and get some, early growth. Like we had some clear indicators of daily utilization and retention, and the user experience was there, and we were starting to get clinical outcomes. So that's when we started to raise.
Okay. Do you see ever going beyond a B2B model and perhaps reaching out to practices so that providers can directly access your services for their patients?
I think we're really focused on how we become the standardized chronic care solution. And so whether that be working with payers or employers or providers and their practices, whatever it takes to, to be that standard of care, we will pursue.
Okay. And what about Medicare patients?
We serve Medicare today. We have several Medicare contracts. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of contracts, someone is asking about the 8-year government contract that you mentioned. Did you have to guarantee the ROI in order to win that contract?
No.
Simple enough. And the final question. So someone is asking, have you considered direct to patients? I'd say you've already answered that. How, as you've been building your leadership team, what would you say has been your biggest challenge? I know we talked about culture and fit and, keeping someone on too long who didn't fit, but any other challenges to building your leadership team?
Well, I think particularly in digital health, you have a mix of skills. We have people from healthcare backgrounds, tech backgrounds, and so just getting alignment and really making sure you're bringing out the best of all these skill sets is the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, this has been such an intriguing conversation. Stephanie, I will tell you that I personally had 10 questions that I posed to you, and we are just 40 questions from the audience. So it feels like a rapid fire. I see Stephen is back. So before I turn it over to Stephen, I'll just ask for one final piece of advice that you might want to offer for entrepreneurs who are listening in today, but are just starting out in their entrepreneurial journey.
Well, I would say do your homework. And if you're going into healthcare, really understand the industry and the segment you're in. But after you've done your homework, start with one brick at a time and just get going.
Fantastic advice. Thank you for that. Stephen, back to you.
Thank you, Suzette. Thanks so much for leading the conversation. Stephanie, thanks for all of your insight and responding to the 40 questions, and for the TIME way of managing your morning. I know there's going to be a lot of other people following after this. Thank you to everyone for joining. If you enjoyed this program, next month we'll be featuring Lex Rovner, who's the CEO and co-founder of 64X Bio, on May 16th. We also have another program coming later this month, clinical diagnostics on consumer electronics, on the 26th of April. And you can find out more about those two programs, as well as some other things we have coming up on our website, which is matter.health. Thank you again, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.